Well, talking about the Trinity there and the three in one. And as we look at the oneness of God, we are reminded of the divisions of mankind. Wherever we look, we see divisions. Some of them are quite healthy divisions, like if you're a Geelong supporter or you are going for the other team. I'm trying to remember what it was called. Who was it? Oh, Richmond, that's right, Richmond. They're from Victoria as well, aren't they? They won, did they? Yes, okay. Well, we've actually been on campsites where we've seen fights break out between different sides of the football game. Arguments, and it gets really nasty, you know. Divisions in game. We have divisions between our schools. It's quite interesting that Helen, my dear wife, when she was a nurse at Brisbane Boys College, she had a new student who arrived from St Kevin's College in Melbourne. It was an independent Roman Catholic boys' school. And that young man went from a Catholic boys' school to a Presbyterian Uniting Church school. Can you imagine that happening 20 years ago? You know, Catholic boy to a Presbyterian college. Gosh. And Helen was confronted by the president of the AFL. And he said, look, we've got a young lad here called Chris Scott. And we want to make sure that you look after him, make sure he gets fed well, he gets enough sleep, and he's looked after. He's going to be playing for the Brisbane Lions. And of course, he did move on to become the coach of Geelong. And they lost. He's still a winner. Those two sides still, I noticed, had a good feeling for each other. There was friendship in that particular area. Helen and I have been watching lately, the Netflix drama. And it's all about a politician in Denmark. And in that particular drama, the lady who is the main character is challenged in many, many ways. The movie's called Borgen. And you can see here a person whose life is challenged, her family life is challenged, and the decisions she makes politically are challenged. And all the way through it, you can see what I believe to be a Christian ethic. She can see the divisions between the different people, yet she is able to try and bring them together through careful thought and consideration of other people. The episodes always start off with a title, and the first was from Søren Kierkegaard. To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself. To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself. And in the final episode, the quote, which is accredited to Abraham Lincoln, nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Well, what we might ask was Jesus' motto. What was his greatest motto? And that's something I want to talk to you about today. And I was originally going to talk in Psalm 90. I'm glad I didn't, because you don't have Psalm 90 at this service, do you? We only have it at the 7 a.m. service. So I want to just comment on the word dared. From that day on, no one dared to ask Jesus any more questions. Who dares wins. I first encountered those words as an 11-year-old boy at the Duke of York's Royal Military School, a school run by the army for the sons of soldiers who've been killed in battle. Since 1802, young men have gone there, and we would parade every Saturday before the RSM and every Sunday before the Commandant. And then we march off to school, to the school chapel, which for one was the Anglican Church, for the other was the Catholic, and the nonconformists, they had a special service at another place. What really stood out to me on one of those parades was the fact that as we wore our badges for our father's regiment, there was one boy there who had this amazing badge, and it was a dagger. And on the dagger were the words, "Who dares wins." And I find those quite challenging words, for they are the words of the commandos or the SAS. Now just pause and think about that phrase, "Who dares wins." In some ways it can be quite a dilemma for a Christian when you talk about serving our country, loving your neighbour, and asking that question, who is your neighbour? Over the week, I was challenged when I heard the story of those soldiers who had been in Afghanistan. And there were a couple of instances where it would appear that some of those soldiers did the wrong thing. They clearly did the wrong thing. It's very hard when you're under such intense pressure not to always do the right thing. The point Jesus is trying to get across to those who build walls between themselves and others is the point I want us to look at today. The point of us learning of how to come together. And so Jesus, when he leads us on this walk, uses the commandments. First of all, the commandment of the law in Deuteronomy 6:4-5, of loving God with one's heart, soul, and mind. And then with a second, like it, from Leviticus 19:18, loving one's neighbour as oneself. Now this in itself, given Jesus' audience, didn't appear to be a problem. But it was. This joining of the two. It becomes a problem because Jesus interprets the latter in a manner that would have enraged many of those listening. Please, again, think of world politics and think of how careful people have to be at the United Nations when they're talking about trying to solve conflicts between one nation and another. Palestine, of course, being a given case at the moment. Words have to be so carefully picked. The Leviticus verse is one of inclusiveness, referring to the nation of Israel. The neighbour is inclusively one of your own people. Nobody else, one of your own people. But Jesus horrifies many of the listeners when he infers that the neighbour included those who was considered their enemy. Dangerous words. They found that very hard to stomach. It didn't make any sense to them. The verse in Leviticus was, in a sense, a national creed. It limits the love of neighbour to one's own people. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your people, but you shall love your neighbour as yourself. Now, over my years in the Defence Force, I've cared for many, many military personnel. I've gone to hospitals, psychiatric wards. I've met them out in the field. I've also met them in some very, very strange places. But one of the things I did learn was to walk with them and let them talk. Many, many years ago, as a young ordinand, I was very fortunate in having the Archbishop of Canterbury then, Michael Ramsey, as my so-called father in God. And he's a very wise man. And he once said to me, "Geoffrey," eyebrows go up and down, "try more to keep your ears open and your mouth shut." His head went down, and I've never forgot those words. nor the bold patches that came down like this. And I thought, they are great words, aren't they? Husbands, I'm sure you've learnt those words very well, haven't you? Always, always listen to your wife. As I do. I've heard horrific tales of war from our soldiers, sailors and airmen. But I've also had the privilege, and it's a wonderful privilege, of going to other places. I've been on board ships where we've boarded people trying to get away from hostile situations. I've been to Christmas Island. I've sat with and talked and listened to people from many different countries of many different religions. I've been horrified by their hatred for each other, having come from different countries, because those people are different to them, and yet they're seeking some form of neighbourliness, someone who will care for them. And yet I've been thoroughly lifted by the love and honesty of some of those who want to really be neighbours. And I have people here in Australia, I've met beautiful people who have come from other countries and love being our neighbours here. In fact, most of you most probably been to your doctor and met one of them. Lovely people serving us from another country. Isn't that what it's all about? So the news this week for me was one that faced me with a challenge. It faced me with a challenge of who is my neighbour? And I believe that my neighbour is anybody who I come face to face with. We are all walking this planet. We are gifted with life. As our Psalm 90, that is the set psalm today, has told us, we come from dust, and to dust we shall return. Our time is very, very small in the infinite history that goes on and on of this world and of our God. And we can serve by knowing that all people are to be our neighbours. When I was in a certain war zone training, I was fortunate to be with some senior officers. And one of the distinguishing things one would see on one of these officers might be a thing called a DSC, the Distinguished Service Cross. It is given to few leaders. And if you see the awards being awarded and they're mentioned in the paper, you'll see Soldier A or Soldier B or Soldier Z was awarded with this particular Distinguished Service Order Cross. Because we don't want to mention their names because of what they're doing. We have young men and women serving today, doing a terrible job. And I think that we, as Christians, should think of the work they are given to do. We should respect that amongst them there will be those who will do the wrong thing. But also, I know there are amongst them many, many who do the right thing, who do care for their neighbour, and who do support those who are going through very, very difficult decision-making times under great hostility. One of the bearers of the DSC is His Excellency General, the Honourable David Hurley, ASDSC retired. I've met and admire both he and his wife as being beautiful Christians, beautiful people who show what it is to know one's neighbour. When Scott Morrison, who of course is an LG person, Christian, appointed David Hurley, he said that he was clearly his first choice. Why? And these are his words. He takes on those Australian values as someone who is able to bring people together, looking eye to eye, face to face, understanding people's challenges and issues, one-on-one, even in a very direct and humble way. Of course, David was once a practicing Anglican. He had to be, didn't he? Until fate, he met a Presbyterian. He went to a jazz Club in Sydney in 1976, his short hair giving away what he was. And a lovely young lady was there as well, a young Presbyterian lady, and she was approached by him with the line, "Will you mind my cardigan while I go up to the bar to have a drink?" Fancy an Anglican boy being asked that, a Presbyterian girl being asked that by an Anglican boy back in those days. And of course it went on from there, and they became beautiful people of God, people who loved their Lord, and what a great, refreshing couple to have leading our country. Now, I do have a little pointer for you ladies here, and this comes directly from the wife of a wonderful man. Her name's Linda, and Linda actually starts her day with a hula hoop. She places the hula hoop on her hips, and she moves her hips to and fro. And the hula hoop goes round and round. Have you girls tried this? But she also opens her Bible, and she does her daily Bible reading while she's swinging the hula hoop on round her hips. So husbands, guess what you can get your wives for their next birthday or for Christmas? Get them a hula hoop. And maybe, looking at some of you, you can get a hula hoop as well. And you can hula hoop together, read your Bibles, and go on merrily. So let me end with a Presbyterian story. After the devastation of World War II, the British Council of Churches wanted to support the church in Greece. So that much thought, they sent a deputation of 3 Scottish Presbyterians of the most conservative and Calvinistic variety. One of them heard the deeper call to a liberality of spirit, and so they stopped at the priest's house in the Greek village. The priest was both delighted and touched by the visit of these 3 Christians from Scotland. How could he show his appreciation? Well, he remembered he had a box of fine cigars he'd been keeping for a very, very special occasion. Much to his dismay, 2 of the visitors firmly turned down his offer for a smoke. The third, however, took the offered cigar and he smoked it with obvious enjoyment. The priest then remembered a precious bottle of wine he'd been keeping in his cellar for some occasion. But when the wine was offered, the 2 guests again refused the preferred drink. But the third drank down not 1, not 2, but 3 glasses of this wine. The priest was pleased, if not puzzled, and of course the 3 Scotsmen zoomed away on their way down the street. As they were driving to their next appointment, the 2 strict Presbyterians, after a pregnant pause, remonstrated with their friend. "Why did you smoke the cigar? And why did you drink all that wine? You know that we neither smoke nor drink." I know, replied the third man. "But one of us had to be a Christian." End of joke. It's a beautiful hymn, and it talks about love. And it's called "O Love That Wilt Not Let Me Go." And if you want to join in, please do. We need the volume up. And from the ground there blossoms red, life that shall endless be. Beautiful words that remind us that we come from dust, and to dust we shall return, but life shall endless be. And it's in that vein that we pray for the Baxter family, for Ray, Daniel and Craig at the loss of Roz. Amen.